The Bible verse that we chose is from Proverbs chapter 12, verse 18, and it says, "Reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." When Dad and I have discussed some of these types of conversations about relationships and how we communicate with one another, it's so true. Every single day we have the unique ability to be able to raise each other up, or we have the unique ability to tear each other down. We learn communication patterns within our families. Growing up, we witnessed positive patterns of communication and negative patterns. Our parents talked openly with one another, or there was little communication at all. We also learned whether it was safe to express our feelings, or if it was safer to keep our emotions and our ideas to ourselves. Depending on our family, some of our parents were extremely affectionate and affirming to us, and this naturally built up our self-esteem and self-confidence. And others of us still struggle to this day with a lack of self-confidence and a lack of high self-esteem because we didn't grow up in an affectionate and in an affirming environment. There are two styles of communication that you witness growing up, and you can also identify within yourself: being an introvert or being an extrovert. Being an introvert, good ways to describe your personality would be that you are energized by being a thinker and being introspective. Another good way to describe you is that you are a processor. Depending on the situation, you like to think about the situation, and you may or may not act. You are also not quick to express your thoughts because you need time to process what's going on. Other ways to describe your personality are that you value the depth of the experience and getting the most out of it, and you also enjoy your quiet time. For us extroverts out there, a good way to describe your personality is that you're energized by the outside world. You typically enjoy meeting people and interacting with others. You are seen as outgoing, talkative, and generally make decisions quickly. From an experiential point of view, you prefer to have a variety of experiences. Now, for most of us, we already know whether or not we are more introverted or extroverted. The important thing for you as a couple to think about is when you communicate how your different personalities have different needs that must be fulfilled in order for you to feel heard, understood, and valued. The cool thing about communication is that it's a learned skill. And no matter what you were modeled growing up by your parents and by your family, is that you can effectively change the way you communicate with your partner for the better, so that you can both meet each other's needs. To start off tonight, I'm actually gonna just say a little joke. It's not that funny, but it has a it has a good.
You're not supposed to say that.
Well,
you can't lead with that.
Well, I'm going to anyway. So Jack and Max are walking from a church service, and Jack wonders whether it'd be all right to smoke while praying. So Max replies, "Well, why don't you just go ask the pastor?" So Jack goes up to the pastor and asks, "Pastor, may I smoke while I pray?" But the pastor says, "No, my son, you may not. That's utter disrespect to our faith." So Jack goes back to his friend and tells him what the good pastor told him. Max says, "I'm not surprised that he said that. You asked the wrong question. Let me try." So Max goes up to the priest and he asks, "Pastor, may I pray while I smoke?" To which the pastor eagerly replies, "By all means, son, by all means." So the moral of the story is the reply that you get depends on the question that you ask. And that's really, really true in our relationships, that the way that we present questions and the specific questions that we not only ask ourselves but we ask our partner really kind of determines the outcome of where the conversation is going to go. And so tomorrow specifically, when we start to get into conflict resolution, we're gonna kind of really go through the nuts and bolts about how we can help you guys work through communicating effectively and working through disagreements that become really, really volatile or are really emotional. For example, when Kate and I first started dating, exes was a huge hot button for me. Jealousy is one of those sneaky things that if you don't catch it in the beginning and deal with the causes of it, it can be a monkey on your back that causes damage throughout your entire relationship. Not only does jealousy cause negativity, mistrust, paranoia, but it can be a gateway to creating assumptions and seeing into things that aren't even there. If you or your fiance struggle with jealousy, you need to ask each other a few different questions. Number 1, what are the actions that I'm doing that are making you jealous? Number 2, why does this make you feel insecure? Number 3, if we were to switch roles, would you be comfortable with me doing the same thing? Number 4, is this a behavior that I can change in the future? And number 5, what can I do to help you not feel jealous anymore or forgive me? I'll be the first guy to admit that in the beginning stages of my relationship with my wife, I was the super jealous boyfriend, and then the super jealous fiance, and now I'm a relaxed husband. To be honest, when my wife and I first started dating, I was simply just so excited about her that I was so afraid to losing her. And for that reason, I wanted to do everything in my power to protect her from other guys. What I was really trying to do was protect myself from getting hurt. When you fall in love and become really vulnerable to someone else, it can be really scary. And for me, it caused me to do and have a lot of insecurities and to be overly jealous. The way that my wife and I overcame my jealous tendencies were 3 things. Number 1, she would reassure me that I had nothing to worry about. Number 2, she would call me out when I was acting jealous and was being unfair to her. And number 3, anytime that I would begin to start to feel jealous, she told me to let her know right away so we could figure out what was triggering the fear in me. Over time, these 3 things really helped, and it also created open communication and a deeper level of trust and intimacy between us, because we both knew we could talk to one another about how we were feeling and we would work through our challenges together. See if this can help you too.
Even the best of communicators need a little bit of help sometimes. Zach is a really good communicator. He has a good way of sharing what he's feeling, and getting those feelings out of the people around him. And I oftentimes am not a great communicator. I listen very well, but I'm not so good at speaking my mind and sharing my thoughts and making sure that I'm heard. And so when Zach would respond in a way that was, I could feel the jealousy was heightened when those conversations would come up. And we both agreed that we wanted to talk about our past. We wanted each other to know everything, our past relationships, what that was like. We felt that that was important so we could really get to know each other and learn how to love each other the best that we could. So we would have those conversations, and I would force myself to share that information, knowing how painful it was for him and knowing how angry he was getting. And the anger I felt was pointed at me. And it really wasn't pointed at me, it was pointed at my past. But then he would make comments like, how could you date that guy? And instantly I took it upon myself like, oh my gosh, I feel stupid right now, because he's basically saying, you did something that I can't understand and it doesn't make any sense. And so I would shut down and I wouldn't want to share anything. And just recently, we were at the gym and I saw one of my ex-boyfriends there. And typically,
I can't escape them.
in the past, I wouldn't have said anything for fear of the reaction, for fear of like, if I say this, then we're gonna spend a night in silence, or, not terrible, but then I thought, okay, I think we're past this. I think we're okay. We're at a good place. So on the way home, I said, I don't know if you noticed, but so-and-so was there. And the way that Zach handled it today was so much different than the past, because he could say, oh, no, I didn't notice him. I mean, of course, he had to put in a little jab of, and if I did, I would have. But then we moved on, and it was fine. And so we can communicate now in a much better way, and I'm more free to share what's really going on, and the simple things of, I saw someone, I want you to know, just because.
Right. And I think the moral of this story, at least within our example, is that no matter where you guys are within your relationship and the way that you communicate with each other, communication is a learned skill. So we've been together 7 years, and it probably took me 4 to 5 years to really be able to communicate in an effective way with Kate, so that I wasn't putting her down or making her feel stupid, or make her have regrets for things that she has nothing to be ashamed of. But it took a long time for me to be able to kind of figure that out, and so just know that as you're going through these sections, if you're at a place where your partner doesn't communicate maybe the way that you like them to, or you wish they would, know that it's progress, and it takes time. It doesn't just switch like that. Wish it did, but it doesn't.
And the other thing to remember is that the lack of communication leads to assumptions, leads to attempted mind reading. You don't want your partner to have to assume what you're thinking or what's going on in your brain, and you also don't want to assume that they know what's going on, because a lot of times it's wrong. And so just talking about it and being upfront is so important.
So there are two types of communication that we want to talk about: verbal and nonverbal. Communication is 20% verbal and 80% nonverbal. So often it's not in what we say, but in how we say it that impacts our partner the most. Can any of you think of specific types of body language that you exhibit when you get happy, mad, or scared, or even excited? What about your partner? How about any specific body movements or tones in their voice that drive you absolutely crazy when your partner does or says something? These are called your hot buttons, and they're the spice of life. A little bit of spice can be good, even fine at times, but pushing hot buttons on a regular basis can keep you from ever resolving your conflicts, and also creates a lot of aggravation between you and your partner. So, the first key point that we're going to be talking about is just learned behaviors. So again, I learned yelling and different things like that, not really from my dad, but more so from my brother. I would see that when he would get into a disagreement with my parents, or with my brother or my sister and I, things like that, yelling was an effective way to control a conversation. So I started to emulate that, and I found that if you scare people, it works. But it's obviously not a good way to do things.
We talked about the styles of communication. I statements are, it's a change in the way that you talk about how you're feeling. So instead of, you did this and you made me so mad because you did this, it's, I'm really upset right now because you did this. And so it's not placing the blame instantly on the other person, it's internalizing your feelings, recognizing your feelings, and then sharing them in a way that's less, it's not going to bring up the defensiveness of the other person.
The Feelings Wheel was developed by Dr. Gloria Wilcox of St. Petersburg, Florida. The Feelings Wheel helps you identify the layers of your underlying feelings. It shows the opposite feeling on opposite sides of the wheel. Please refer to the Feelings Wheel when you are at a loss for words in describing the emotions that you're experiencing. The cool thing about vocabulary is that the words that we use creates the emotions that we experience. So think about that. Your vocabulary and the specific words that you use on a habitual basis determine your reality and the emotions you feel on a daily basis. Take a few minutes after the section is complete to review the Feelings Wheel and see how it can be helpful for you the next time you need help expressing yourself.
A lot of times it's hard to come up with those feelings that you're actually feeling. And so the Feelings Wheel is a great way for you to come up with those words that can actually help out with the conversation and help the other person to really understand how you're feeling. So inadequate is a lot different than discouraged, or, you know, I'm confused, or I feel guilty.
They've done research studies all across the world, and one of the things that they have found is that when people are asked to describe emotions, most people can only describe about 10 to 12. Happy, sad, disappointed, frustrated, things like that. But when you think about emotions, there are a multitude, probably thousands of different words that we can use to describe how we're actually feeling. So instead of feeling angry, maybe I'm totally confused. Or instead of frustrated, maybe I'm perplexed. You know, you can think about it too when you get really frustrated and you might, you know, say a swear word, and it's kind of like that release that, but you know, if you swear a lot, or if you have certain words that we say, it can really heighten our emotional levels, okay? It's the same thing with this. So if you can expand your vocabulary with the different feelings that you experience, it's a much better way for you to be able to kind of regulate your emotions and describe what you're feeling. One of the things that we really encourage you to do after you use the I statement and the for example statement is to talk to your partner as close to the event as possible and own your words. And by not using you statements but using I statements and saying, you know, Kate, I feel so confused because when we were at the gym, you couldn't take your eyes off your ex-boyfriend. Yeah, right.
That did not happen.
But the whole point is, instead of me internalizing everything, and instead of me kind of sweeping things under the rug and trying to figure everything out on my own, I'm bringing up what I'm feeling inside to my partner. Because the thing is that Kate's my best friend. I love Kate to death, and she can really upset me sometimes. She can frankly piss me off sometimes. But you want to know what? It's never a deal breaker. I never have in my mind, oh my gosh, that was it. Okay? And sometimes, there's probably at least one couple in here, sometimes when you get into big disagreements with your partner, some of those feelings might kind of rise up a little bit, where you're afraid to actually have those deep discussions and have disagreements because you're afraid that those could be deal breakers. And we want you to remember that you're sitting next to your best friend. You're sitting next to the person that, you know, hopefully you trust the most in the world. And you're sitting next to the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. I mean, that's a huge commitment. That's not just like a, hey, let's go for a bike ride. That's like, hey, let's go for a million bike rides, or I don't know, something like that. You get the point. Integrity within the relationship. There's no quicker way to hurt your relationship than by lying or by telling little fibs. And so, again, it really just comes down to you having integrity with yourself to make sure that when you're talking with your partner and they ask you specific questions, you need to be honest with them. It goes without saying that lying is one of the worst and most poisonous things that can happen in a relationship. Lying creates mistrust, and it's a very difficult thing to regain trust in a relationship when that bridge has been broken. It's easy to tell you not to lie, but what about when you know the truth is going to hurt your partner's feelings, or you could get in a lot of trouble? You need to tell the truth every time, every day. The funny thing about the truth is that it always comes out. It may be a few days from now, maybe even years from now, but that truth will always find its way out, and the longer it goes without coming out, the more hurt and mistrust it will cause within your relationship. I've worked with so many different individuals in the past who have explained that the reason that they lie to their partner is because they don't want to hurt them, or because they want to avoid conflict, a big fight. If this is you or this is your partner, take the time to work through your differences and how you can actually create an environment in your relationship that is built on trust. If you can't trust your spouse, who can you trust? Boundaries when we talk. This is kind of like fair fight rules, but again, it's important that when you guys are discussing things that you have disagreements about, that you are both being respectful of each other's boundaries. So for example, if one of you is a lot larger, a lot taller than your partner, than your fiance, we would encourage you to sit down at a table like this together when you talk, so that one of you isn't towering over the other person. So that can be a little bit of a power differential. Other boundaries might be that you, I don't know, think of something.
Don't leave the room. So this is something that I have to focus on even today when we get in a disagreement or when we're talking about something that's not so much fun. I would rather just get up and take a hike. And Zach is very insistent, don't walk away. Don't leave this space right now. We need to talk about this. And so it's not so much of let's take a break and talk about it later. I just take the approach of like, I'm done, and I leave. That's a boundary that I'm crossing. We need to, like I said, it's fair to say, okay, I can't talk about this anymore right now. I don't even know what to say to you, so let's just talk about this in a half hour.
And then finally, for communication, making time to talk. In our world today, we have so many different facets and channels to be able to talk with one another. We have texting, IMing, email, you could talk on Skype, use your cell phone. You name it. There's really never much of an excuse to be able to say like, oh, I just couldn't get a hold of you or something like that.
But what's crazy is that it's easy to not talk. It's easy to go through days without actually really talking, more than just, hey, how was your day? Good. Oh, yeah. All right. Sweet. See you later. Mm-hmm. The superficial conversations are easy.
The best thing about communication is that no matter the type of person you are or the models of communication you've been shown in the past, you can learn how to communicate in different and better ways. Specifically, you can learn how to communicate in the ways that meet and fulfill your partner's needs for communication in your relationship. So don't give up hope on yourself or on each other, and know that with time, effort, and good listening, you can learn to communicate in the best of ways with each other in your years to come.